Welcome back, folks. This is Texas Tales, the official podcast of Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine. I am your host, Joshua Shive, and I have my co host with me, James Kossab. James, what's new?
We're in the exciting new year and it's all been good. Got to do some quail hunting over the weekend, so that's always a
Man,
I know. But quail hunting in 80, 90-degree weather just doesn't feel right.
no, it definitely doesn't. Especially when you're deer hunting as well. It's kind of the same thing. You're just like, you know what? I'm kind of done with this season. So, also, that is the close of deer season 2025, which is depressing. And it was kind of a weird season, but I would say overall good season.
Yeah, it seemed like y'all were very successful.
Yeah, it was a good season for the kids, good season for the just the family. I would say of all of the members on our lease, most of them did pretty well. I would say the ones that did come out there and then for the most part did well, but overall the weather kind of sucked all season.
It really did. It's funny. My brother, when I was telling him I was going down there to hunt, he's like, "Yeah, they're just gonna have so much cover because they haven't had a freeze." And I wonder if our average temperature has probably been about where it normally is. But I can tell you, we haven't had the lows that we should by this point in the year.
No, and I think my theory is the seasons are shifting. It's not the global warming where you're getting these really hot winters, but I think that the seasons are kind of shifting to the right. So January, February, March are turning into our colder season, and then spring really doesn't start until the end of March and then April. So I think that's my theory.
Well, I think you could be onto something, especially with the stagnant calendar model like we have. Like, if we're off at any point, consequentially, if we're at 2026 years, as we all agree,
Right.
and we have even the most minuscule error, we naturally are trending that direction. Right? I've thought that for a long time, and yeah, it's good to hear someone else say it. 'Cause you're like, all right, I'm not totally crazy.
And it started a couple years back, and then now it's progressively getting worse. Like I think this year was definitely the hottest deer season that I've been a part of. And Thanksgiving weekend was good. There was a couple of weekends where we did have good cold fronts, but overall it was a pretty hot winter or deer season, if you will. So I'm just not used to it, but I truly think seasons are shifting. And then at what point are the animals, their habits, will they start shifting as well?
Absolutely. Or even if their habits are, you talk about it being like a weird deer season. And I felt like the same with quail season that, normally more towards the further into winter you get, they'll start combining coveys. And I felt like we were hunting very small, isolated groups. Like they were little coveys comparative to where they should be in January. It was all like eight birds. And it was to the point that we'd go back and hunt the other side of the road thinking we'd only saw half the covey when in reality they just weren't guarded up, and so maybe they're staying the same, and it's just our dates are wrong.
Yeah, no. And I think that's kind of goes along with everything. So with y'all's hunt this weekend, so you said it was pretty hot. How did y'all end up doing?
Uh, we laid over 2 birds in some pretty thick cover that we didn't get back. All in all, so we were hunting public land, and if you're not familiar in Texas, and I know you are, limited opportunities. And so we go down to Chaparral, and it's a walk-in accessible hunt, and it's in Cotulla, Texas, so it's like deep, hardcore South Texas brush country. And my wife, it was funny. My wife woke up right as we were pulling through the gates, and she was like, "Man, you really talked this place up." And kind of was looking around. I'm like, you got to be a part of it. You got to get in it before you can judge it. And I think she definitely left with a greater sense of appreciation. So we rolled 2 birds in some thick cover. We didn't get back. It was just us two, and we were hunting over Hungarian Vizsla, and she worked excellent, but the birds were tough to get to participate. And we saw 5 coveys, and out of everybody at the check station, we saw the most birds. But it was some of them were in the neighbor's place. Some of them were. It was weird. We had a covey that we got on pretty quick, and we never got a rise out of them. I'm used to birds running. I've hunted a lot in like North Texas, but we literally have just no clue what happened to these birds. They just plumb disappeared. And I did save us a ton on marriage counseling. Go get you and your wife lost in South Get you and your wife lost in South Texas for a solid 40 minutes, and you will really find out how strong your relationship is.
Yeah, I would say that I've already tested that many times in other circumstances with hunting and fishing. And I can tell you that I have had my fair share of that. I'll call it outdoor counseling, where you're not too
That's a great
excited.
term.
You're not too excited with each other, but you got to have to figure it out, between the two of you, what you do next or how you work this out. So it's definitely,
I so I feel like I have a pretty good sense of direction. Like I just naturally, and it's 15,000 acres, and I've never hit a stretch where normally if you walk far enough in that place, you'll hit a road, and then you can kind of like, all right, let me onyx it back to the truck. And I dropped a pin every single time where the truck was, and this happened to just be the one time where I was like, we're not chasing birds. Like we'll just stay fixed, going due east. We're gonna come back out. I don't know what happened, and I started walking back, and it was funny. She's like, "You keep changing directions," and I'm like, "I don't know where the truck is." And I was like, "Well, we'll just walk till we hit a road," and then you have that bad moment, like in 10 minutes of walking without knowing where you're going is a long time. And when you're walking 10 minutes, and she goes, "Oh my god, I left my phone in the truck," and I'm like, "Okay," and she's like, "Use to find my iPhone," and to Apple's credit, it sent us in the right direction, and that was a good feeling to see that red Dodge sitting there.
oh my goodness. I can only imagine what was going through your mind, because there's a lot of times at my deer lease where I don't know what it is, and it's mainly at my stand. If we shoot something and have to go track it, you will lose direction very quickly. And if it wasn't for the phones, the apps, all the different things that you have, I'd probably still be sitting out there under some sort of fire that I created building a house. I don't know.
It's a weird feeling, and it's especially, my brother Chris got lost on an elk hunt a couple years ago, and granted, he was only lost for a couple hours, and it was so funny. He's so, like, chronic, like, you have to drop pins, you've gotta, and I'm like, "Come on, it's not that bad," and after that, like, he is a changed man as a result of it, and he was talking about it when I was telling him, I'm like, "Yeah, we got a little turned around," he's like, "That," he goes, "It's so silly, but 50 acres you can get lost in if you've never been there before."
Oh yeah, and then if the terrain looks the same, it's nothing for you to get
Mhm.
turned around and all of a sudden you're heading in a direction that you're like, oh yeah, the stuff's over here. We've done that many times where we're tracking deer, and for me, I always, about every 50 yards of blood, I go ahead and drop a pin, and just for last blood. And that way, once we get to that point, we know we can kind of see the trail of where it's headed and how it headed and all that different stuff. But if you didn't do that, or if I didn't do that, I'd be lost. No doubt.
Yeah, no. That's a great strategy. No, it's funny, man. Like I said, it was funny to get called out on it too, because I've definitely been with like other guys before, like, oh crap, which way do we go? But having the wife go, you don't know where we're going, dude. I'm like, I think it's that way, and it turns out it wasn't. Which I knew. I knew the check station from the very back of the place to the check station 6 miles, and I knew I was like, I know worst case scenario, we're just gonna start heading south, and we'll
You'll
the
figure
problem
it
is where the
out.
hell's the truck? Yeah, we'll find somebody. But it was really cool, and I was excited to share this with you and our audience. The demographic of hunters, it was the first time I've ever seen this. One, it was a ton of husband wife combos, which always makes me happy. We're like, man, that's cool to see out the wild world. But it was a lot of younger couples, and upland hunting is up. I mean, it's like Fox News and upland hunting have the same demographic. It's a older bunch of people, and it was so freaking cool to see young people out with like their daughters, and it was so cute because we were up at the check station. One guy had shot a quail, and you got to check out, and they inspect the wings. They tell you how old the quail is and everything. And the little girls run it up to the biologist with the quail in hand. Was so excited. It was really neat, man. I was super happy. Like, it was a good, like, indication of where we're at in the state of wildlife in
Right.
Texas.
And that's a big part of where I feel the direction of our just the outdoors is going, where you'll see a lot more couples, because rather than fighting that battle of, oh, I'm going to be gone this weekend, or deer season starting this weekend, and rather than fighting the battle of, hey, I'm always going to be gone, it's more, hey, why don't you come with me? Why don't you get to experience some of the things that I love to experience? And it's a much easier conversation. Now, I won't say all women love to do that, because that's definitely not the case. I've got a bunch of buddies who their wives would much rather stay at home, you go hunting, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Now, for me, my wife, if we're hunting and fishing, she's right there with me. She enjoys every bit of it. Now, with the kids, it's a little bit more difficult because there's still that instant gratification where they want to see something now or they want to catch something now. And you have to find interesting ways to kind of, I'll say, just bridge the gap of time to where they are having a good time, but they're also just not super bored the entire time. So,
No, that's a
yeah. So,
no, that's a great take.
yeah. And that's one of the things where, for me, we were kind of, we had a sermon in church on Sunday, which it was talking about the different things that you want to accomplish in 2026. And, me and you had this conversation prior to 2026. But one of the things that we talked about was what I'll say first, we talked about New Year's resolutions, which I gave up on that a long time ago. I'm more about life choices and stuff like that. But so we talked about how majority fails in the first week. And then after that, it just slowly trickles from there. But one of the things that we also talked about is instead of, figuring out what do you want to do with 2026, it was what is your purpose, God's purpose for you, and will you figure that out in 2026? So, kind of what me and you had talked about. The first thing I thought about was, man, I love taking kids hunting, and that's something that I've always enjoyed. I feel like I have, I'll say a good knack for the patience with kids and being able to help them in whatever hunting endeavors or fishing endeavors that they have. And that was something where I could really see future wise where supporting kids in their hunting and fishing endeavors, as well as getting them closer to God, Jesus Christ in those journeys. So that was something that we had talked about that I thought was kind of cool, kind of going into what you were talking about, seeing more families, more kids in the outdoors, because I think that's a big part of where it begins is in the outdoors and being able to experience those things where this is God's country and it's very enjoyable.
Well, it was funny checking out at the check station. I was telling my wife, I'm like, "Hey, we got to get you a hat." Everybody I knows has a Chaparral WMA hat, and it's blaze orange, just a traditional plain hut. And I was like, "We've never got you one. Like, it's the first time you came." And it was so funny. The guy at the check station says, "No, we don't sell those anymore." And he looks at mine and goes, "Wait, how do you have one?" And I was like, "Oh, I got it first time I came down when I was a kid." And it was so funny. He's like, "How old is that thing?" I was like, 20 years. He's like, "Will you sell it to me?" And it cracked me up of like that cool sense of community where you're like, man, like it was funny coming down as a 6-year-old. It was like, oh, all these old crotchety old men. But it is cool to be part of that community and like you care about the place. And it was neat, like showing her like, oh, we saw a huge rattlesnake over here, or yeah, I've never been in this pasture too much, or we always found, quail over here. It was neat kind of get to show her and especially I lost, that lab that was just such a big part of our relationship. And I was like, you never got to come down and hunt here with him. This was his favorite little stock tank. We'd sit here, eat lunch. Normally the Cowboys would be playing. We'd stop at noon, let the dogs out, get water, and him and his mom would just go sleep in the water trough over there. It was cool to get to share that with her, and I could tell how much it meant to her to like be a part
Right.
of that. And I was like, man, it really is that moment of like, what are and I get it's not for everybody, but if you do have a partner that shows interest in it, take them out in it. It's such a like cool thing to get to experience, and it was just exciting.
It is. It is a lot of fun. And also the best part about it is when they start getting that deep interest just like you, now there's no battle. It's, oh, we're going hunting, where are we going? Or we're going fishing, let's go. And it makes it so much easier for you to be able to do those things because now not only but for me it's very boring when I go hunting or fishing by myself, so I always like to have somebody with me. So that's always a good thing to have as well, is just having your partner with you and just enjoying it together. So it's definitely a very positive thing. Now for you, hunting public lands, have you always done this, or is this something that you've kind of picked up over the years?
No, man, so this was like the thing we did. So we grew up an old with it. I actually just live down the road from him now, but we grew up with an old man that was from New York, and his uh grandpa ran Llewellyn setters and hunted upland in like the most traditional sense of the way. You didn't drive. You used over and unders or side by side shotguns. There, you didn't use semi-automatics, and you would hunt behind dogs. You didn't use a lot of retrievers. You maybe kept one, but was just like a pure traditionalist. Is how he grew up, and he kind of modified that to be a little more practical to South Texas. He still loves his Llewellyn setters, and he took me down. So it was funny because I didn't realize it was a little bit of extortion. But they have the youth season down in Chaparral where you can get access if you bring somebody under 17. And I was laughing, telling my wife this. My brother, who's 18 years older than me, was taking me at 6 years old with his friend so that they could get access because they could hunt just the same. And
Right.
I was 6 years old, couldn't even have shells in my gun while we were walking. And I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I like upland hunting is just so special to me. So no, we've always had dogs. Um, and it's really cool seeing my Vizsla. She retrieves well. And I've always wanted a pointer. So now that I have one, it's like, oh, this is, and it's very like pure in essence. And like I love a lab. You can't beat the drive of a lab, but the like true like model hunting of just having the slow, methodical pointing dog working through the brush.
Mm.
But yeah, something I've been doing since I was a kid. But
So,
I heard you did some fishing.
yes, I went fishing with the family today, and I wouldn't really call it fishing. It was more driving the boat around and finding random sandbars and kind of posting up, doing lunch, playing on the beach, if you will. But it was probably the lowest tide that I've ever seen in Matagorda. Now, granted, I've only been fishing here for 5 or so years, and when we went out, we went to West Matagorda, and I could see every sandbar. Every one of them was exposed, and it was a little bit bizarre because it kind of screwed up all the areas that I wanted to go to. I didn't feel comfortable going back in there, so it kind of turned into more of, all right, we're just going to play on sandbars and then pushing my boat out around the sandbars and try not to get stuck. So that's kind of what my day turned into.
With the second you told me you went fishing, I had to ask, how do you fish this like weird summer winter pattern? Like, what's your go to?
You know what? I can honestly say I haven't wore waders yet. So that's one interesting aspect of it. Some people think I'm crazy, but 60-degree water doesn't bother me. It's as long as it's not over kind of my chest area, it's really not that big a deal. I stay pretty shallow as well because I'm mostly just kind of sight casting reds. But I'm still now we're gonna go tomorrow, and I did get some waders to where we're going to do a little bit more deeper wading fishing and go after some of the bigger trout. So it's just gonna be me and her tomorrow. But that's kind of our goal tomorrow is focusing on big trout and getting in areas where it's a little bit deeper.
No, I get that. That's so. Whenever y'all do like a play date, like what percentage of fishing are y'all doing? There's a lot of dads out there wondering what's the acceptable max amount they can do.
So if it's with kids, if you have good wading spots, and all depends on the age of the kids. But with my kids, if we have a good spot where it's not too muddy and the kids can get out of the boat, I can kind of let them do their own thing. Now they need a little bit of help here and there, but for the most part, they know how to throw the rod and reel. They know how to throw the line out. They know how to work everything. They're not at the point where they're changing their lures out or anything like that. They are fishing with popping corks and gulps, so they're just reeling fish in and then kind of bringing it to me or bringing it to my wife to get it off the line. So we're still involved pretty heavily, but in the weather that it was today and kind of how we were today, we were more looking at places where we could drift, which we could find none. Every lake that I wanted to go into, I didn't have an avenue in because it was just so shallow. So we just had to kind of call an audible and say, all right, we're just going to have some fun. So today, which is not normal, we probably fished about 20 to 30% of our day, where normally the last time when I took my son out and it was me, him, and my wife, we probably fished about 70 to 80% of the day, and it was a lot better circumstances.
That's always the hard thing, especially in wildlife where nothing seems to go as planned. It's always learning to pivot, and I think that's one of the hardest things to do as an outdoorsman, and even in life, I guess. I think this is a good parable for just living generally, but it's so hard to recognize. Actually, my brother and I were having this conversation yesterday about like when to recognize when to move on from something of like what's the point of no return, and I think that's one of the hardest things to do is like, all right, plan A is not gonna happen. What does plan B look like? And kinda like when to make that audible. So I think it's a really hard thing to do. So I always commend people who are just like, "Yep, we just did this now."
And I will say that's one of the toughest things to call an audible when you're in a major or you're in a minor, because you only have that limited time to really get to where the fish are feeding very well. And so a lot of times I'll have a couple of spots set up to where if this one doesn't work, it's not a far trek from the next one. But I try to game plan as best I could. But everything that I game planned today was in the wrong bay, and I should have went east, but I went west because I was excited about trying these few different spots, and then I couldn't even get to them, so it didn't work out. But those are some of the things that I learned from to where now my next game plan is first step I need to figure out exactly what that tide level looks like. And then I need to figure out, okay, from that, I'm going to go left or I'm going to go right. So make it a little bit easier. But that's my understanding or lack of understanding of Matagorda because I've only been fishing it for a short period of time. And so I'm still figuring out when there is a tide at a certain level, I can't go west. I need to go east and vice versa.
Well, I had one of those trips over. I never fished spring break, and obviously, right? Like nobody fishes spring break. That does it long enough. You're just like, oof, just avoid that. And I went down, not even realizing it was spring break weekend. And I took my brother-in-law out, and we were gonna go fish one of the passes because it stayed pretty cool later into the spring, and I was like, I bet you there's still trout stacked up there, and there were. It was great fishing, but there were so many other kayaks and boats, it was
Mm.
miserable, where it was like, "This isn't worth it." And I remember we fished till, like, 10 o'clock, and I literally go, "I can load us up and go put us in a spot where I know there's nobody else. We're gonna get there about 11:30, 12-ish. We're gonna fish till 3 either way because we had to be back for a different thing." And I was like, "Well, I can give you 3 hours of nobody, and I don't know if fishing's gonna be good." And it was such a cool moment to be with somebody's like, "Yeah, let's go try this. This sucks because you literally have people casting over you, throwing lines over your kayak, and you're like, "This
Oh,
isn't worth it."
so when you're kayak fishing and the is the etiquette a little bit different where you're is it normal for kayakers to get a little bit closer to each other or do they try to keep their distance?
What I always find is the hardest is normally for the most part, I'll say kayakers are pretty good because it's so easy to communicate with one another. You're normally not competing with like noise and everything,
Right.
and you're not operating at high speed, so there's a fair amount of like adjustment. You are definitely much more intimate with kayakers just because it's like your ability to travel is just so limited. What I always find most difficult thing is like patterning out somebody's movements. I don't think
Mm.
it's just as cut and dry as like they're going A to B. They may have got turned around. They may have been rigging. The wind may have caught them. Like I had a occasion like that with my father-in-law, lad, this last fall where we were on red. It's a big school of redfish, and we were slowly going after them. We were pulling a fish out, and we cut off a lady that was fishing them too, and we didn't see her type deal. And it literally was like, we apologized. We're like, oh, we thought you were heading the other way. And she's like, it was. Then I saw the fish, and we're like, oh,
Oh
okay.
man.
But she was super sweet, and she, kept their distance, and we all caught fish. It was perfect. But yeah, you definitely are much more intimate always in the kayak, just because it's like there's only so many spots that make sense.
Well, I can tell you there was a couple of times today where I was thinking in my head, "Oh my goodness, if I had a kayak, I could go right in there. I don't want to make that walk and there's so many areas that you can get to with the kayak and with the boat it's just it's not ideal." So there was a lot of times where that's my first thought is, "Oh my gosh, if we had a kayak in the boat, I could be." There was a lot of times where I
Yep.
could see the fish, but I wasn't making that walk, 200-300 yards.
It is always funny the parallel of man when you're sitting on that bank, you're like, I just need a kayak, and then you get the kayak, and I just need a boat, and then you get all the way to the boat, and you're like, damn, I need a kayak.
I need to go back to the kayak. So going
Just
back
put
to
me on a
the
pier.
yeah. So going back to the public hunting, I haven't. I will say I actually have never hunted public land. So if someone is looking to hunt public land, what are some of the things that you look for? And I guess it would depend on species and stuff like that. Or are there websites to kind of help you with that?
Yeah, so to get like kind of brass tacks, Texas Parks and Wildlife draw hunts is kind of the way to start. And I'll put the link to the website in the description of this podcast. But basically, you go on there, and there's a couple different types of hunting. There's e-postcards, which I'm not super familiar with. I'll be honest. I believe it's like a certain percentage. Then there's true draw hunts, which are kind of like a lottery system, and then there's walk-in hunting. And so the latter of all three of those is very uncommon in Texas. It's walk-in hunting. And so normally most of these WMAs operate under their own schedules of they have specific days that are open. So for Chaparral, for instance, they opened up once in I think October for youth quail, once in November, and then now once in January, and that's it. And so it's 6 days more or less. And I think they had a little under 90 hunters a day. And so the way it works is you'll buy your public land access permit, and so it's $50, I believe. You get a really cool little booklet that comes with it that shows you all the available public lands, and you show up on site and you register. Now every WMA is a little different, so some of them work at like a little like drop box where it's like, we came in at this time, you put a note card in, and then the checkout station, we shot this many birds, we check out, and they'll ask you to cut a wing off, and then others will have biologists on hand to walk you through it. The thing I'll say in Texas is that's very common. Most of the time, if you're doing upland hunting, you are required to wear your hunter's orange, and it's normally about 140. I think it's 400 inches and 144 inches on your chest is typical, and you do have to wear an orange hat on most of them. And yeah, they have different other regulations. You can't have slugs, which always cracks me up because there are some you always jump a nice buck down there. That yeah, it's a good thing they don't let you have slugs. Lead me not to temptation.
Right.
Um, but yeah, and they've all have like little different like they normally have like 20 rules. It's not a super overwhelming process once you get on there. And I will say I have yet to find biologists on staff like at these WMAs that aren't just very outgoing and super eager to answer questions and make sure you're doing your stuff right. And honestly, they all have phone numbers listed. And I hate to blow these people up because I'm sure they already get overworked as is, but they always answer all my questions, and even some of them will give you insight. We hunt. Oh, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head right now, and I'm not just saying that because it's great quail hunting and don't want anybody else to go there. But it's northwest Texas, Canada. It's maybe I can't think of the name of it, but it's in Canada, Texas. And I'd called the biologist and was like, "Hey, we're just swinging through on our way to Kansas. Is there, are y'all finding quail?" And they were super nice about like, "Yeah, we've been noticing them a lot in the lower country. A lot of guys are hunting the hills, and nobody's asked us, but we don't think that that's not where we're finding the birds when we're doing surveys." We showed up, and sure enough, there was three guys hunting all like the far hillsides on like this pipeline right away. We go down to the creek bottom and found two coveys like that, and I was like, "That was awesome! Like, thanks for the insight."
Yeah, that's one of I have some buddies that do public hunting, and I was always curious of number one if, and I always think of deer hunting when I think of public hunting and stuff like that, but I know people do dove hunting and different things like that. When they go out early in the morning and they're going deer hunting, and I love the videos where they're sitting in a tree and all of a sudden you see a couple of guys just walking through, could be 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and they're just kind of walking through, and you're sitting there in your tree stand, just going, "What's going on?" And that's kind of what I envision of public hunting. So I'd be interested to see. And now I know there's a lot of videos out there of some of these guys who go to Kansas and other states, and man, they really do a good job in killing big deer. But they put in a lot of work to find these deer and then kind of scout their patterns and stuff like that.
We were hunting Kansas like 3 years ago, and there was this huge cedar thicket windbreak, and we're like the pheasant. We were nasty front was coming in blizzard. All these birds got to be on the south side of this north windbreak, and we're pushing up and around, and I see my Vizsla. She's real sweet personal dog, loves affection. Jump up on this bush, and this bush gives her a hug. It was a guy in a ghillie suit bow hunting. And I mean, we literally went right up, and he's just pet. It was the weirdest thing. We're like, I'm not in deer hunting mode, and especially when rifle is, we're always real cognitive of being safe with that,
Right.
just because it is public land if they're there first, and it can create a pretty dangerous situation unintentionally very quickly. And it was so funny though. I just couldn't explain why this bush just grabbed my dog, and she's excited, and I'm like, man, what is going on? Like I said, this guy in just a beautiful ghillie suit up against a spruce that was just
Oh,
blended in perfect. And we were so apologetic. And to his credit, we've bumped into a lot of deer hunters there. They've always been like, "Oh, we were hoping you were gonna push deer our way. We saw y'all coming."
oh my gosh. So speaking of things that grab dogs, uh, Florida has released their, I guess, their numbers for bear hunting. So they now have so many tags that they're allowed to kill bears in Florida, which is, there's so many different areas where there's different predators that are becoming a problem in different areas. So why don't you go ahead and go through those numbers, and then let's talk about that.
Well, and before we dive in too much, I want to get your opinion on this. I had seen a thing talking about all of the anti-hunting groups that were purchasing the permits and they're just not exercising them. I was curious on your
Uh,
opinion on that. I kind of had to go, you know what? Touche.
I mean, it's kind of like Ticketmaster, the people who buy up all the tickets and then they price gouge the
That's
crap
a
out of you.
great parallel.
So, but I think it's funny because this goes for so many different areas, and I was just listening to Joe Rogan and Cam Haines, and man, there was another guy on there, and they were talking about the mountain lion problem in California, and most of the people that are voting on these regulations live in the cities, so they don't care one way or another. They just think, oh, it's a pretty animal, and it has a soul too, or whatever it is that they think. But they're not dealing with the problems that the farmers, the ranchers have to deal with on a daily basis, where they literally have to be a part, or be in danger of these animals because nobody will do anything about it, or they can't even do anything about it because of the regulations, which is pretty sad. So when you think about people who buy up these tags and just let them go, it's kind of unfortunate because they don't truly understand what happens if we are overpopulated with any animal. And it could be deer, which are very, timid. They don't harm you. But if you've ever been in a neighborhood where there's deer and let them drop their fawns in that neighborhood and let your animal or your kids get around that fawn, you will find out very quickly how dangerous a doe can be at that point.
You're 100% right. And what I think is particularly cool about the Florida thing is it shows the management of a resource to a point of sustainable harvest. And I mean, I don't think you or I are ever recommending let's do a buffalo jumps tomorrow. I think we'd love to
No.
see we'd love to see a reality where you can sustainably hunt and harvest something. And I was looking and I was pulling it up here and it's showing, roughly about a third of the hunters that drew on their tags were successful, which is pretty high. So it definitely shows up a high population, but it's always funny too because I think that there's a substantial fear, and sometimes it's fair, but a substantial fear when you look at the number of permits issued, where it's like 172 permits. It's like, what are you trying to do? Make them go extinct? And then it's like that's factoring 100% success rate. And I believe in the Florida instance, it was a stop at harvest, so it was active until a certain number had been filled for each zone, and I believe that's how it operated. And then they would shut it down, making sure that no zone was over harvested. And it's exactly what you want in the wildlife community, that you've preserved a species where people, wildlife biologists who have no stake in the game, they only care about the animal and the well-being of the population, are able to say, hey, we can open up this season for limited harvest. Like that's a great thing. That should be celebrated. It's always kind of silly that it
Right.
can get bastardized.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people understand that there's a lot of data that goes into these decisions, and there's a lot of thoughts and processes that go into making a decision on what that number is in certain regulatory areas. And it's not to, hey, we don't like black bears, we just want to go extinct. It's hey, we have a serious problem here. We have animals that are coming into our communities and killing our animals. And I just saw, I think it was Friday, maybe Friday of last week, a woman was killed in Colorado from a mountain lion. And
Yep.
those are the things where when you start seeing some things like that happen, you have to understand that regulation is important. You have to understand that it's not that we just want to trophy hunt. And that's kind of the gray area where everybody's just, oh, you just want trophy hunting. That's it's just killing animals. No, it's good for the environment to regulate these animals and to ensure that we're not allowing them to be harmful to our communities, but also we're allowing them to still thrive outside of our communities. So we're not trying to make anything go extinct, but we also want to make it very aware that we will regulate these because we don't want them to kill children, uh, adults, whoever. And I think that's important.
Well, is Florida not like an all-time scary state? You got black bears, panthers, gators, crocodiles on the far southern tip, anacondas. God damn, yeah, I was just running that through my mind of like they've got like the super zone of predators because I was like, oh, predator management. And I'm like, what the hell's not a
Absolutely.
predator in Florida?
And now they have all these kind of other ones that have introduced themselves, the non-native species, the pythons and all these other weird species that can kill you. And so it's turning into the outback very quickly where
Pretty wild. America's basement.
and you know what? California is going to, I feel like the trajectory of where they're headed is very similar because they are in the mindset where, hey, these animals are our friends. It's a sweet cat, and you will find out very quickly that that animal will eat you and does not care about you or your feelings.
You are you familiar about the New Jersey story with Phil Murphy who ran on ending the black bear hunt?
No.
So Governor Phil Murphy ran like a big part of his platform was ending the black bear hunt in the state of New Jersey. They had to reinstate it, I think, 2 years ago because literally like, in that so that like that lapse of permits because they were already not issuing enough. Which I mean, it's that's an arbitrary thing to say, obviously, but they were already under harvesting. That in that 2 years, it became like a serious nuisance problem that even like the state paid harvesters couldn't keep up with the number.
Oh my goodness. And that's what
It's
happens.
crazy.
That they people don't understand how quickly that these animals can repopulate, overpopulate, and that's an area where it gets very dangerous because if you do nothing, you will find yourself in a lot of bad situations to where now you have to do more. Where I can't remember where it was. I think it was in Japan. They have the military where they're going out and killing. I can't remember the animal, but it's basically because the hunters have declined year over year. The generations, there's not as many hunters now. They're having this overpopulation problem of, and it may be bears. I can't remember what it was, but they're literally having to get the military to go out and kill these animals because it's such a problem, and that is what it will come to.
Well, it in this, I've got, two asides. You remember how contentious it was with the wolf reintroduction in pretty much
Oh,
all of the lower 48. Well, in I think it's Idaho or backcountry hunters and anglers, which I think Ryan Callahan's the new president of, which is pretty cool for them. I think they're doing a program now, and don't quote me if it's Idaho maybe. I'm pretty sure they're doing a program where they'll pay for your hunt if you save all your receipts to go hunt an elk, as long as you kill a wolf too, and you with a tag, obviously.
right.
And I was like, "Man, that's a pretty good gig all in all." They'll cover your housing, your fuel, they'll cover everything. All you do is shoot a wolf. And it is kind of funny seeing this like that push and pull factor of these different like state agencies of like, "All right, now what are you gonna do?"
Right. And that's the part of it where I'll say I am in the middle when it comes from because there's a fine line when you're talking about conservation and then true problems with animals overpopulating. So I know for you as well, there's the conservation aspect of it where we want our kids to be able to enjoy a lot of the things that we enjoy, but also we want to make sure that the predator population is in check as well because they will kill off everything if you're not careful. And I think, for me, where we hunt at, we have, I won't say we have a mountain lion problem, but we definitely have a predator problem. And that's another area where we didn't see a lot of fawns this year. And we're trying to understand why that is. We definitely have a lot of coyotes. Uh, I think that the hogs are starting to play a part in that. We don't know it to what extent, and then also mountain lions. I know we have one for sure because it did try to kill a cow. So that's the other part of it. Where if you don't regulate these animals, then all the work that you're doing to conserve the other animals that goes right in the toilet.
Well, let me ask you this: if the mountain lion walks out tomorrow, is that thing not going to be above your fireplace or no?
Oh, he's going to be sitting right there.
Oh,
And
that
I'm
is
probably going to go have to shoot a quail or something to put
do
it
a
in
full
his
body, and yeah,
like the full
I
body mount for sure. That's
you
happening.
have to. I've told my wife that a lot. Where she. It's really funny. She's kind of the opposite, I think, of most women at least. She loves Europeans, no shoulder mounts. She goes, you can European any deer you want. It's fine. She can put it wherever you want. She's pretty cool with. They're all over the house.
Right?
She does not like shoulder mounts. And I told her, I was like, the one exception, that's one, I will shoot a Kodiak, like grizzly one day brown bear. Two, if I ever get the chance at a mountain lion, 'cause we've had a few, I was like, that's got to do full body above the fireplace. It's got to be like the right display, just looking at you.
Oh yeah. And that's why it's hard for me to go on and do this elk hunt, because also if I shoot one, I am getting it mounted properly and it will fit nowhere in my house currently.
On the back porch.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like, okay, all right, I got to have a shop if I'm going to kill these animals, because the main thing is really the experience, the meat, but to have that hanging on your wall every time you look up, you flash back to those moments where all the hard work that you put in to get to that point where you were able to harvest that animal.
It really is. It's funny because it, it, I think it's so mischaracterized where it's head hunting. And I genuinely don't know a lot of people like that really hunt and like are active in the outdoors that don't want to tell you the story about it more than like, you know what that deer scored? It's more like, oh, it's like, man, I hit him and he ran and we thought we didn't find
Yes,
him. And that's always the stuff that people like. You hearken back to that sooner than like, that's a 160 class deer.
right. And I think that's a lot of it where you kind of it goes hand in hand. There's a lot of trophy aspect to it because there's so much work put in. It's no different than a football player who practices all off season and all he wants to do is to win the Super Bowl. And for hunters, we look at it the same way. We're doing all these different activities to grow these deer to certain sizes. We're putting in the work, making sure that we're putting in the hours, whether it be bow hunting or rifle hunting, making sure we're hitting the targets. We're on point all the time. And then getting to that point where you have that opportunity. Now, once you harvest it, you have that trophy, but you have the bonus, what goes along with it, which is all the wonderful meat that you have to eat and the wonderful memories and everything in between. So even though you're kind of look at it as trophy hunting, there's so many other aspects of it to where
It,
it's highlighted.
Isn't that the funniest pejorative ever to use? Of like, you're trying to trophy hunt, and you're like, yes, I'm trying to grow the oldest, biggest version of this species possible. Like, isn't that the most sustainable best thing? Like, if you were on the outside saying, like, I'm okay with some hunting, I don't like trophy hunting. I've heard this opinion a lot. It's kind of the funny thing of like, so I hunt a small 60-acre place right behind my house. You mean to tell me I shouldn't want to cultivate the best deer possible and only selectively harvest the best deer possible, the oldest, most mature buck that's at his, like at his peak performance in a one buck county? It's better that I shoot the, basket horned eight like that. In your mind, that is the more acceptable outcome. It is the weirdest, stupidest pejorative of like, you're a trophy hunter. It's like, yeah, we all should be.
Absolutely. And a lot of those people are the ones who are voting for, hey, we shouldn't kill any mountain lions in California. Hey, we shouldn't kill any bears in Florida. Those are the people that are voting for these different types of things to where now it's becoming a real problem. So call it trophy hunting, call it whatever you want. Every hunter out there plays a pivotal role in ensuring that our next generation has the ability to do the same things. Also, they're doing things to where now you're not having bad car crashes because there's so many deer everywhere, and everywhere you go, you just run over a deer. So there's so many different things that go along with it.
Have you ever heard the thing of insurance rate, like insurance companies push for longer deer seasons?
I I have not heard that, but that makes sense.
I've always heard it, and I've never seen anybody be able to like elaborate or explain it to me. But it cracks me up where it was somebody I knew from Michigan. It's like, well, Progressive, they're a huge advocate for longer deer seasons. And I was like, I don't know how you know that, but it logically tracks.
No, and that makes perfect sense. And I don't know if I know for me, from personal experience, I have hit two deer in my life. And first one, I, I don't, I don't even know how it happened. It's just the weirdest things how some of these deer just come out, and the deer was on the side of the road, and I see it. I'm going by, and for some reason, as soon as I get up to it, it decides it's going to jump smooth in front of me. And it did, and I smoked it. Second one, not as bad, but you're coming around a corner and you see a deer and you don't really have time to stop, and you're just hoping they don't jump in front of you. And they do. So I fully
I,
get it.
yeah, I just got like my first nice truck in life, and I was pulled out of my driveway, not even a half a mile from the house, and a doe ran into my passenger door. I
Oh,
didn't know
that's
what
the
happened.
worst.
I thought I hit a person or something. I literally pulled off and got out because I didn't know what I hit. And I just see the doe sitting. And I was like, oh, that wasn't in the grill guard at all.
Oh, and that's the worst, especially when not only do you destroy your truck in the process, you're looking at this animal and you're just like, what are you doing? You had to jump right into the side of my truck. Like, what did you think was going to happen? So it's an interesting, number one, from an insurance perspective, how they promote this, and for me as well, I would promote it as well. But it's kind of good for us because, not that we want or need to kill more, because once my freezer's full, I tell the family, hey, that's it. Now we're just hog hunting.
I know we're wrapping up here, but so after the shot, what is in the Shive household? What is like y'all staples y'all do with y'all's deer?
So most of the time, I like to keep a hamburger meats majority, and I like my hamburger meat 50-50 with brisket. I've always liked it that way. I process it that way myself. And so hamburger meat, we eat that year round. It doesn't matter what we're eating. That's always number one. I would say the second thing is sausage, and really finding a good sausage is key. We got a couple of different places that do it pretty well. There's a place in Hempstead called Arnold's. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but they do a loaded baked potato sausage, which is weird when you hear it, but when you taste it, it's unbelievable. And that's another area where sausage, definitely number two. And then I do a little bit of chorizo and breakfast sausage and stuff like that. What about you?
Oh yeah, well, one, you're gonna have to get me a ring of this loaded baked potato. You piqued my interest. My man, a hamburger, like you're saying, I don't do brisket. I did that one year, and our brisket, we raise our own cattle, and so
Right.
the briskets are always just so small, and they don't have enough fat on them as is. So I normally just do 10% beef tallow and just throw that in, and
Okay.
just do the straight ground deer.
Yep.
We did really good with does these last couple years, so I'm like, ah, that's fine. And then this year we actually went a little different. I did a bunch of salami. I'm
Hmm.
gonna try to do some pastrami. We'll see how that goes, and then a little bit of chorizo and just kind of like odds and ends. But yeah, hamburgers like 90% of it.
Oh yeah. And it's interesting, if you can do so many different things with the meat that people don't understand. And the sky is the limit when it comes to deer meat, any of those other kinds of meat, but deer meat specifically. You go to, and like I bring up these are not sponsors. Arnold's not a sponsor of ours,
You
but
could be.
it could be. But I will say that they have such a vast variety of things that they offer, like boudin, different things like that, and they're just phenomenal. So when you harvest a deer, you have the ability to create 7 different types of dinners with that deer, rather than just, oh, it's a steak dinner.
Yeah, that is like the one thing, like we talk about the new generation or like husband wives hunting. That's the other thing. Not everything has to be deep fried. Don't get me wrong. I love deep fried backstrap. It's phenomenal. But that is always the funniest thing of like, well, those deer are unhealthy. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Deep fried deer is unhealthy. Deer
Right.
itself is phenomenal. It's like one of the most lean meats on the planet.
Very
It,
lean.
it, is it not always your favorite thing? And I'm always careful who I do it with because some people wouldn't be as happy about it. Not is it not the best thing in the world when you've got like a pretty easy audience and you make them wild game and they can't tell?
Oh, I love that. And a lot of times, well, I'll say most of my friends, they don't, they all are hunters, and they all eat deer meat or any kind of meat. But with the kids, that's where it really, a lot of times I'll say, "Hey, would you like a hamburger?" And them not knowing that it's a venison burger, and stuff like that. With the kids, they always, if you tell them what it is, they're not interested. But if you just make it for them and let them eat it, then they're like, "Oh, this is very good. I want more of this."
We had shot a pig a couple years back when I was working there for a metal finishing facility, and one of the guys like, "Hey, I'll make lunch for everybody on Thursday." I'm like, "Cool." He's like, "I'll make pulled pork." And we had one lady there that would not eat wild game. I mean, would not touch it. Her husband hunted, and she wasn't like anti-hunting. She just
Right.
would not eat it. And it was so funny. We're all eating like little pulled pork sliders, and we are kind of having a working lunch. We had a busy day, and she walked over and grabbed one. And was just talking about how phenomenal it was. Until this day, I don't think she knew she was eating wild pig, and if she did, I think she'd have a hit list that'd be so damn long. And she just was telling us how good of a job he did and how phenomenal it was. And it's like, little do you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of people who, if you told them what it was, and they would not be too excited about it. But James, another week gone. We are in our new year now, and hopefully you haven't set too many New Year's resolutions, because they're probably about to go out the window.
I got another week.
You got one more week, and then that's it. So, definitely looking forward to the year. Definitely looking forward to a lot of really good guests. And I think as the year ramps up, we're going to have some pretty exciting guests and some really exciting stories. So looking forward to it.
Yes, sir.
All right.